I feel like it's Romania Black, and I feel like it is time that we restart with the classic Dr. Pepper because we've maybe reset the timeline. We're on episode 17 of Steins Gate, and I'm going to be honest with you all. I have waited to literally the last minute to watch this episode because I'm honestly, one, terrified of what this reset's going to bring, because it's not going to be a happy ending, because otherwise we'd be like at the end of the season, you know? We'd be like, if this had happened in episode 24, I'd be like, oh, this is the final episode. Look at us fixing everything. But no, we're only on episode 17, so stuff still has to go down, and that makes me nervous. So... But yeah, so that's one of the reasons. And the other reason is I wanted to make sure I could devote all of myself to watching this episode, because who knows what's going to go down in it. So that's where we're at. But I have a lot of comments to get through before we get into episode 17. So this intro is probably going to be long. Y'all know that. So let's just dive into it. I'm going to be throwing my dog a toy whilst that's happening. Matoka Meiji for episode 14 says, I know it gets said often, and by this point I'm sure you're ahead and you've watched the dub of this already, but the scene in the car up to the lab, Michael J. Tatum, who is also the dub writer, I know he's one of them, we talked about that and somebody pointed that out in a previous comment, has an actual real breakdown in the recording booth in character because he was in and out of the recording booth and overworking himself so much that he sort of went into a sudden method acting and responded as real as humanly possible to what was happening. They had to go in and get him out, and when he calmed down, they reviewed the recording and decided to keep it in. Yeah, I believe that. I have like mixed opinions about method acting to the point where you make yourself have a nervous breakdown. That's makes me nervous. I know Stanley Kubrick basically tortured Shelley Duvall in The Shining until she had a mental breakdown. I have problems with that. I have a lot of problems with that. But I do feel like J. Michael Tatum, I believe he had a breakdown in that scene because it feels real. And so knowing that it was, I feel for him. I'm like, I don't think you should get to that point where you're literally having a meltdown, but it's immortalized now on the screen, I guess. Alexander Q for episode 15 says that one moment with Kurisu extending her hands towards Suzuha to help her escape from the cops is such a good moment. I particularly love Kurisu telling Suzuha that she is not the Kurisu that she knows yet. In a show about time travel, I think this is especially valuable for the characters to remember, and we have been mentioning it regarding Okabe. Whatever Kurisu will do in the future, whatever things Suzuha knows her for, they haven't happened yet. And Suzuha is doing herself a disservice by not influencing this younger version in any way she can and not giving herself the opportunity to really get to know Kurisu. Yeah, because if you're trying to change the past to impact the future, you often need, it's not about just changing the past to impact the future, it's about changing the present. I think that's where people get a lot of messed up things. They're like, oh, well, if we just went back and changed the past. I'm like, the past has already happened. Doesn't matter. You're here now in the present. What you do now is going to impact the future, not what you do in the past. And I know for a time travel story, you can't really follow that logic, but for us in reality, that's what we have to look at. So yeah, her treating Kurisu differently will impact how she acts in the future. So Alexander Q also says, Okabe going from a self-proclaimed mad scientist to being one of the founders of the resistance army that is opposing the oppressive government is such a cool twist. But also, we all can expect that because he's been talking about the organization and everything. So it's like, of course you would become the founder of that group. I especially like it when you pair it with the fact that Kurisu and Okabe are friends right now, but apparently they end up on opposite sides of the conflict. But who knows? Who knows? We've talked about it in the past that what Suzuha is going off of is based on everything before what's happened in this series. So who knows? We have no idea how things are going to go down. I guess we'll see. Jake Collins did clarify in episode 15 that Okabe did not send the first D-mail knowing it would save Kurisu. He sent it because he had just seen a traumatic scene and wanted to tell his friend. It was not part of some plan, as they did not know that the phone microwave, name subject to change, what it did at the time. That is good to know. I feel like that all makes sense and that tracks. My thoughts in the discussion that I've been talking with you all is that I feel like Okabe will realize that first text message sent things into accord and sent things into motion. And that if he wants to change the past, he may have to alter that initial thing. That's what I was getting at. But it is good to clarify that he did not have a plan of saving her with the D-mail in that first initial scene. Sorry if it came off that way. So thank you for clarifying that. Bestial Moon for episode 16 says, I want to give a special shout out to the soundtrack. The track that plays in the beginning with Okabe and Amane, their redone roof conversation, is called Gate of Steiner and is an absolutely gorgeous piano piece. If I had a piano, this would be one of the first pieces I learned. But then slowing it down when they're back in the lab after reading Suzuha's letter is just mwah, chef's kiss to the scene. This series has a really good soundtrack. I don't talk much about it because I'm not really a musically inclined person. I like music. I appreciate the soundtrack. I just don't have enough musical knowledge to really get into depth with it, but it is very good. Kabirka on the Discord for episode 16 shared this video that had the extended visual novel letter. I did go through it and look at it. It just has a few extra things. It talks about how the letter was written in June 13th, 2000. But after the initial wall of the fail, we see that she restarted the letter 2 months later. So she started writing the letter, then took 2 months off to grieve more, and then came back to rewriting it. She remembered who she was a year prior. But then the letter says in the visual novel, the day the great king of terror came from the sky. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know what that means. We may find out what that is, right? Stupid. What's the great king of terror? He should have come down from the sky. I could only remember my name. I remembered a year ago, the day the great king of terror was said to come down, but didn't. The great king of terror is nowhere to be found, but I want to die. And she asked for forgiveness for forgetting. So I don't know what this great king of terror that the visual novel points out about. In my mind, it's Okabe. He comes back to refresh her memory before then, or is supposed to come back and doesn't, or I don't know. I don't know what the Great King of Terror is referring to. I don't know if it's a plot point that we're going to get later on in this series. We're going to see, but that stood out to me in that extended letter, and I was like, that's weird. So I don't know if that's going to be something that comes back in this series or in the movie, or I know there's material beyond just this season, so we'll see. And then Amber Sandra said, Okabe and Suzuha, I kept talking about how there's that messed up chain link fence that they're talking in front of. And in episode 16, they're like, oh, so they're like chain linked by destiny. And I was like, that's so good. Yes, absolutely. And then on Discord, that people had talked about how Suzuha's quest, like if she succeeds, will she cease to exist? Or will there be no memory left? Obviously, Okabe changing and pressing the D-mail is making it to where they don't remember any of the conversations that they had. But Okarin remembers. So he knows everything, even if nobody else knows that she was the daughter or whatever. I don't know. We don't know how him sending the D-mail and altering her leaving is going to affect. Obviously, Daru does not know that she's his daughter. I don't think Okarin's going to bring it up. I don't know if he will or not. I don't know. But yeah, as Mayuri said, we'll talk about the dub here in a second. Okarin's the only one that gets access to these memories. So it is kind of making Okarin kind of like a god in a way, in a weird way, because he's making himself kind of like a deity. He's this all-knowing, omnipotent force, and nobody else knows what he knows from traveling through time. So that's kind of scary. We'll see where that goes. But anyway, I want to talk about the dub real quick. Going back to the dub, when Kurisu's like, oh, so that one thing failed, huh? There's a shot of her standing right under the Thinker Man statue, which was a really neat shot. I liked that. Daru asks Suzuha to double check the time machine, and she kind of goes through the motions, but I'm like, did you really double check the time machine, girl? Or did she just trust Daru had it, you know? But I was thinking about the time machine messing up, and she blames it on like the rain and not being sent back and whatever. But then this happens in the dub. And I was like, maybe this messed up the time machine. Because when she originally got in the time machine in the future, Daru had it set for July 28th, 1975. She altered it to July 28th, 2010. But then when she's setting the coordinates, she's like, oh, what time should I go back in 1975? Should I go back in the summer, which is when Daru originally programmed it? And Daru tells her to go back earlier when the cherry blossoms are blooming. So she sets it to a different time than it originally was set at. So I'm like, did that reset and not going back to what was put in originally mess up the time machine? Was that a failsafe that Daru had put in place if somebody had tried to steal it and he made it to where the time machine messed up? I don't know. Did her changing it based on Daru's advice affect it? Did all these little things add up with the butterfly effect? Because she sees the butterfly when she gets, when you see her out in the rain in the time machine, there's blood coming down her face. You see the butterfly. Did all that add up and change and mess it up, right? All these factors. It wasn't just one person's fault, but it was a multitude of things all cascading together. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to talk about that or not, or if it's ever going to come up again, but it's worth thinking about. Suzaha's voice actress, once she figures out that Daru's her father, from then on in the episode, her voice actress is amazing. Daru's really good in this episode too. His voice actor is really good, but yeah, like just so good. Now one thing, when she tells him, she's like, oh man, next time I see you guys, I'm gonna be a little old lady. I'm like, girl, you're gonna be 54. You're gonna be 54. That's younger than my parents, and they're not old. So I'm like, girl. But when you're 18, 54 does sound ancient. We'll confer. I did think that when I was younger. I was like, man, 50 is ancient, but no. As someone that's closer to that than 18, I was like, oh no, it's not old. Don't say that. So, one question is that when she got her memory back, I did wonder this going back through. I'm like, she got her memory back in 2000, which would have gave her 10 years to work to find the IBN 5100. Could she have worked to get it in that time frame to get it to where Daru and all them would have access to it by the time 2010 rolled around? That was one kind of little plot hole thing that I was thinking of during this episode. I'm like, is it a plot hole? Because could she have just gone and had 10 years to find the IBN 5100? Could she have had that time to do that? And CERN wouldn't have known because it had been 25 years since she arrived, so none of the triggers would have been made. So I'm like, that felt like a little bit of a plot hole to me. I'm like, if she hadn't been in mental distress and felt like she wasted all that time, she could have instead used that energy towards trying to find the IBN 5100 and had 10 years to do it. And then she could have freaked out when she met them and she was like, I couldn't find it, I failed. That seems a little plot holey to me, but I don't know. But she also was in, a big mental duress. So, the big what if, coulda, woulda, shoulda. But I just felt like, I'm like, girl, if you had not, instead of considering yourself a failure, had just spent those 10 years trying to track it down and get it into Okarin and Daru's hands by the time 2010 rolled around, then you might have been able to not have any of this happen. And Okarin may have not had to change the past again. So, I don't know, right? I don't know. So, J. Michael Tatum, surprising no one. He's great during the letter reading scene. And then whenever he goes to press the D-mail, Mayuri's like, if you do this, it's like none of this was ever real. Yeah, just getting on the problem, getting on making it more of a problem. Now, in the dub, Braun says that he lived with her, and I didn't catch that in the first part of episode 16, so that was good to clarify. And then the last thing that Okarin says at the end of the episode is like, did we change the world enough? Is Mayuri going to live? He doesn't care if the world's not dystopian in the future, just is Mayuri going to live? Now, here's my problem going into this. We established everything that happened between Suzaha and Kurisu and Okarin and everyone. That all impacted Kurisu and them making the time leap machine and everything. If he went back and changed the past, and now we don't have the imminent worry of Mayuri's life being in danger, is this going to lead, because we didn't see Kurisu when we left the episode, right? Is this going to lead to Kurisu not working with Okarin to make the time leap machine, but instead going to work for CERN? Is it going to readjust the timeline to actually be dystopian instead of what it could have been otherwise? So I know I took a long time on this intro, but there were a lot of really good comments, and I was like, we need to talk about this. So yeah, also shout out to Amber Sandra for getting me the episodes so that we can watch them with the dub and everything. I really appreciate that. But yeah, let's not waste any more time. I've got a Dr. Pepper that's been simmering here. Let's get into this. Okay, everybody, we are going to get started with episode 17 of STEINS Gate, and we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and I'll see you all on the other side. That's where we're at. This is a dangerous episode. Holy shit. Well, the harem factor has been absent of this series from the beginning for a while. So it only makes sense as we're going into the last stretch of episodes, the third act of this series, it only makes sense that we bring the harem structure back, right? Oh, this is dangerous. Okay, so we start out this episode. It's August 14th. It is the day, of course it was Friday the 13th. Of course it was. So it's the day after the events that were set to happen where Mayuri originally dies. Right? It's the day after. So Okarin believes that, okay, Suzuha, we changed the past. We did all the things. I don't know where my dog put his toy. There it is. It's like we've successfully altered the future. That's what happened. Because I want to point this out that regardless of what happened, Mayuri still died. I like that they just immediately cut to him going back in time. They knew that we knew. We knew he went back in time. They're like, we're not even going to show you. We're just going to immediately cut to him talking to Kurisu going back in time because they knew. So Mayuri still died. The thing that was changed is that we undid the last D-mail, which it's crazy to think that was the last D-mail was the one that was, well, it wasn't the last email. The one with Ferris came after that. So honestly, Ferris's was the last D-mail, and we've undone that in this episode. So now we're back on track with where we were. But we undid the D-mail to Suzuha. We undid that. So that's no longer a thing. I want to talk in this episode about the things Okarin did that has helped people at the cost of Mayuri dying, and how we're undoing all of those things. That we've decided to undo all of it. So the thing was that the thing that had happened was that Suzuha, the D-mail that was sent, kept her in 2010, and it allowed her time, precious time as it were, with Daru. So it allowed them to bond as father and daughter, which had not happened in the future because he was dead. It also allowed her to change her perspective on Kurisu from what she ends up like in the future. So that seemed like it was relatively interesting. The one thing that's kind of unique in all this is I would have thought as this series went on, with all the changes that Okarin is making, that him and Kurisu would have gotten further and further apart. I thought they would become more distant as things changed. But that's not what has happened. Instead, they've gotten closer. They've gotten closer because of what has happened, which I thought for a second he was going to be intimate with Kurisu, and I was like, whoa, this was not prefaced. I think it's going to happen eventually, and we're going to get to that, and how it's going to be the ultimate heartbreaking thing. It's what's going to happen. So yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself here though. We've got to back up. So we undid the D-mail that he had sent to Suzuha, that had kept her there, that had let her meet Daru, let her have these moments. Mayuri was like, please don't erase these precious things these precious memories that you've built. Please don't erase those. Okarin did it. So now it's in the past now. It doesn't matter. So, but here's the thing. Changing all of that did not get them the IBN 5100 because of what's happened with Ferris, which we'll talk about. And not only that, but Mayuri still died. So we're going to go back to that. I had so much I wanted to say in the reaction, and I was like, no, I need to wait till the discussion to talk about it, and now we're here. So, yes. So anyway, we went there. Kurisu still shows up. Everything seems normal, but then her watch stops. And then they come in and she gets shot. I wanted to go back and see if we could just see briefly, like, what it is. It's just the guys. It's the guys that walk in. We don't even see Moika, which is interesting. So we'll get past this OP here. Oh my God. So by the end of this timeline, we get to like 0.45. That's where we get to. This episode is called Made in Complex. Well, this episode is complex. So we have, let's talk about the D-mails. The one D-mail was the one from to Suzuha to keep her in 2010. To keep her from leaving. That was the one D-mail. We have now undid that D-mail in attempts to get the IBN 5100 back to Okarin and them. Now, I talked about the potential plot hole early on. Doesn't matter, whatever. But we're going to ignore that. But the problem is the IBN 5100 was originally, we see that she was in talks. She was in talks with the father to get it. And that was 10 years ago, assuming. So I guess we're going to go back to that scene, double check, but she may have been in talks to get it with him from him, and he'd already gotten rid of it. It had already been taken care of. So he did not have it. Or we're going to go back to that scene. I'm probably going to adjust what's on Whiteboard Kun here. So maybe that solves my plot hole, was that she was trying to find out from Faris's dad what had happened to it, and then it was already gone. I'm going to point out, in a previous timeline, back in the OG timeline, we're going to point out in the OG back, and I say OG because it's before the timelines were altered beyond all belief that they have been now, is that in the OG timeline, I believe that Faris told Mayuri that the IBN 5100 was at the shrine. Someone had taken it there. Someone had it there waiting. Now, who had it waiting there? How did it get there? Who put it there? I had theorized that Faris, when her dad had died, had just sold it to the shrine. But we don't know that. We have no confirmation of that. We don't know how it got there, but it got there. And that's how Okarin and them found it back in like episode 3. Was how they found it. God, episode 3 feels like a lifetime ago. Episode 3 has not been that long ago, and it feels like a lifetime ago. So, yeah, because we've changed the world line so many times by now. So, yeah, I told Mayuri that it was at the shrine, the OG one. And this was possibly because, Faris's dad was dead. The dad was dead. The dad was dead, which allowed the IBM 5100 to get transported there. Before it got interrupted, I don't know. This is the thing that's kind of crazy, is I can sit here and speculate with you all how things ended up where, what. It kind of doesn't matter because the world lines have changed so much. So it doesn't really matter how we got there. And that's kind of part of the whole problem with this entire thing, is that Okarin is like, okay, well, if we just go back and we just fix this thing, and if we undo this thing, and if we undo that thing, but we've used the teacup metaphor before. You've smashed the teacup. It doesn't matter how many pieces you find. It doesn't matter how you glue it exactly back the way it was. It will never be what it was before. So you can go back and try to undo everything you've done, but it doesn't matter. It's kind of like when you get a present and it has that perfect bow and you undo the perfect bow. It doesn't matter if you go back and you try to redo it the same way that it was done before. It's done. It's lightning in a bottle. You can't recreate it. So there's this discussion that we're having of all of these moments that the D-mails were used to kind of make the world lines better, in a sense. We're undoing all of that for the sake of saving Mayuri. And Okarin is kind of, I don't want to use the word gaslighting because the word gaslighting gets used a lot to the point where it's almost cliche. But Okarin is kind of manipulating everybody to going along with his plan because he's kind of using the fact that he's like, well, aren't you friends with Mayuri? Oh my gosh, Mayuri's going to die. Like, what? And Ferris in this episode is like, yeah, I made that selfish request to save my dad, but Mayuri could die, so I need to go back on it. I'm like, girl, Okarin's making a selfish request, the same that you did. And he's convinced you with the whole knight in shining armor thing that his selfishness is more important than your selfishness. But the point is neither of them are more important than the other. And Mayuri's sitting here in a hourglass, banging on the hourglass going, don't change the past, let it happen. Because I think what happens, the ultimate tragedy in all of this, the ultimate tragedy is going to be Okarin's going to undo everything that helped these other people. He's going to undo all of it for the sake of his own selfish desire to save Mayuri. And I think at the end of the day, the universe is going to be like, yeah, that was really cool. Nice that you could do that. She's still going to die. And it's going to be like, she's still going to die. The universe is going to correct itself. You can't alter that. And Okarin is trying to basically play God to try to alter that to save his friend. And it's going to be this cautionary, tragic tale of you can't do that or you're just going to drive yourself crazy. And it's like, because it's like, it's tragic that she dies. But the point was that you should savor that time with those people because everyone's going to die. It's going to be someone's time at any given point. You need to savor those moments with those people you care about because you can't alter what happens to them. You can only change what you do in that moment with them, the time you spend with them in that moment. That's what you have to savor. You can't change the past. And to Okarin's credit, Ferris was doing the exact same thing he was doing. So undoing that is I don't think I get why Okarin wants to do that, and I get why he's like, well, no, but we got to save Mayuri. But at the end of the day, Okarin is being extremely selfish. Even to Suzuha, he was like, I got to save Mayuri, like, sorry about your future, but my friend takes precedent. And I'm like, So, yeah, and he's got enough main character syndrome that he's like, but my desire is more important than yours. And I'm like, oh, that is a slippery slope. Oh, that is a slippery slope. But anyway, so we go back to August 13th, 1700 hours, and he's up on the rooftop. And again, Kurisu gets actually closer to him. This version of Kurisu was really soft, really like comforting and contemplative and soft. And it was kind of interesting where she talks with him about like, you know, we need to get that computer back. And then, so they talk about the different texts that were sent. So we need to go through this, right? The one that is conveniently being left out of this list that Kurisu sees and tells him is the D-mail that Kurisu doesn't know happens. That's what's being left out. And that's going to be kind of the crux of it. So we're going to put it at the bottom. The first D-mail, as Jake Collins pointed out in the intro, was Okarin informing Daru of the incident. We're just gonna put that, the satellite crashing, which is the time machine incident, and of Kurisu dying, everything. That was the very first D-mail that was ever sent. Then from there we go to the Lotto one, the Lotto D-mail. We go back from there, right? And the Lotto D-mail is connected to Ruka because that was them. That was the one where Ruka got the numbers wrong. That was it. Okay. That was that one. Then we had the one with Moeka. We got the one with Moeka and the new phone. That was one of the D-mails as well. So we're going to have to get back into Moeka and all of this at some point. Then there was Ruka, and that was the gender change. The gender or biological sex change. Gender is a construct. There's that one. Then there was technically Suzuha was after that, but we've already taken care of that. Then the last one was Ferris. Was Ferris saving the dad? I think Ferris's might have been before Suzuha's, but I don't think it was. I don't think it was. I think it was after the fact. So then we have Feyre saving her dad, which glad we got confirmation of that. I was like, all right, girl. I don't always get predictions right on this channel. So when I do, I'm like, yes. So yeah, so it was her saving her dad. Although the whole connection of the dad being saved tied to the IBN, that was a trip. We're going to go back through that. So yeah, so want to make note that Suzaha changing that did not work. Mayuri still died. Didn't work. And again, we've established the idea of the butterfly effect and the fact that this chaos theory, you can't go back to how exactly it was. Something's going to change in the process of you trying to change things. History is not linear. You can't just be like, all right, well, if we go back to point A, we've erased point B. I'm like, no, it's branched off in so many ways by this point. It's out of your control. You cannot control it. And I got a little nervous about Daru not being there at the end of this episode, but then again, I got nervous about Kurisu not being there at the end of last episode, and it turned out to be fine. So maybe Daru was at the May Queen. Maybe he didn't show up because Feyre was there and he didn't want to be jealous of Feyre being all over Okarin. We'll get back to that. But I guess before we go any further, so we have those. Yep. If we go back and change all of these things, then the possibility is that we could get the IBN 5100. If you undo each D-mail in reverse order, then you can return to the original world line where the IBN 5100 is there. That's the thing. No. The answer is no. You can't return to the original world line where the IBN 5100 is there. The divergence meter keeps going up, showing you've altered from where you started. It keeps getting more and more altered from where you started. You're trying to cross that. Kurisu's idea is going in direct opposition of what Suzuha said. So, but here's the thing. Kurisu doesn't know what Suzuha said because we've erased that entire world line already. Okarin knows, but Okarin's brain is essentially a fried egg at this point that's in a state of duress, so he's not thinking about that. But it's like, no, Kurisu is saying, yeah, if you just keep reversing all this, you'll get back to where you started. But Suzuha said, no, every time you alter the world line, you're getting closer to that 1% divergence, which will let you cross over to another one. And maybe that's what she means. Maybe without realizing, Kurisu is like, well, if you go back to the beginning, but her saying go back to the beginning is maybe leading to what Suzuha said of actually going to the 1% and starting in a whole new world line. This is dangerous. They're playing with fire. I just don't want them to be any more Ikaruses, and they already are. So yeah, And so she's like, yeah, let's just do that. Because here's why this maiden complex, that's what this episode's called. Here's my fear, is that everything we change isn't going to do it. Kurisu is the constant in this series. She's the hourglass in the ED. Kurisu, we're going to put her over here. Kurisu is the catalyst. She is not only enabling Okarin and his beliefs, but she's enabling him to being able to do all of this. And she's the mother of time machines. She's the one making all of this possible, essentially. So here's the thing that gets crazy. If we go back, let's say, we're going to talk about what happened with Feyre's dad and the results of that. The results of, this worries me the most. Because it's like, Moika's was a new phone. The Lotto, the first email is a big one. That's a big one. But the Lotto one, the Moika one, how is that going to affect things? We don't know yet. The Feyre's dad one was a pretty big deal because that's affecting a lot of people and a lot of places and a lot of things. I feel like the Feyre one and the Ruka one are two sides of the coin. Feyre is like the overarching, we're affecting economies, we're affecting cultures, we're affecting society with this event. So it has big, broad effects. And the one with Ruka is the polar opposite, where it's literally affecting Ruka's biological chemistry, but also Ruka's entire identity. Right? And I'm like, if we reverse that, like, what is... because in both scenarios, like, I don't know about the Moika new phone one, but in these two scenarios with Ruka and Feyre, the chain, and even with Suzuha, although Suzuha's backfired, Suzuha getting that brief moment of happiness, with seeing her father and being able to be and spend time with them ended up transforming into something that was not good, which is her feeling that sense of failure. And Okarin is basing his actions on that one moment. He's like, well, I helped Suzuha, but it ended up being a wash in the end, and it ended up making her miserable. So if I undo Ferris and Ruka, I'm possibly preventing them from being miserable in the future. But that's not the case with them. Ferris was with her father and she was happy. But there were incidents that happened in this episode that kind of justified Okarin undoing it all, which we'll talk about. But with Ruka, it's like, this genuinely made Ruka happy. So going back is going to make Ruka feel incomplete again. And I'm like, it's just not good. Not good. So yeah. So even so, we're back in this episode. Oh my God. I feel like all of this is in vain. It's not going to matter. The universe has decided Mayuri is not going to live. And Mayuri's been trying to tell Okarin from the start, hey, savor these moments with me. Quit trying to change things that you can't change. And we're just not getting through, right? If there's a chance, then yep. And again, he calls her Kurisu and she helps him go back. It's so funny. It kind of has like, there's a plot line in Doctor Who, and I don't want to reveal it because it's such a good story plot line and it's such a twist, and I don't want to reveal it if you ever go watch Doctor Who. But there's a character that is involved in time travel with the Doctor, and the vibes of Kurisu and Okarin kind of give me the same feelings. It's like the closer they get, the further away they are, and it's like, I want her. I feel like they're getting closer in how intimate they are. Ferris had a one-sided attraction to Okarin in this episode. And I kind of was like, yikes. Because Okarin clearly does not like Ferris. Not that way. He does not have any romantic or sexual attraction to Ferris. He never has. She just, by proxy of the harem, has been in love with him. But he's just like, cool, thanks, bye. But I genuinely do feel a connection with him and Kurisu. I really do. And Mayuri and him are like siblings. So there's a connection there. And Suzuha and him had like a platonic connection. But Ferris, I feel like Ferris is like thrown in as this like one-sided love interest. And Kurisu seems okay with it. But I don't know. But that smile she gives to him, saying, I'm going to forget you calling me Kurisu, aren't I? But we go back 1 hour earlier. 1 hour to where we started the scene. And yeah, and she's like, what's up? And so he did use the time leap machine. So he used the time leap machine to have time to go back to planning it out with Ferris. So he did use the time leap machine to go back. I'm like, the fact that she doesn't remember. It's just like, Okarin has all these memories, but nobody else around him keeps these interactions, and it's so frustrating. So yeah, meanwhile, Daru is over. Where is he at? He's talking about the UPX conference building. He's like, the final match of Ryan at ABGC just ended. And he's like, yeah, Ryan at the Access Battlers Grand Championship. So yeah, it's funny because we see the Rhinet characters on the bag there. One of them looks like Okarin, which is funny. But yeah, so Daru's over there doing all of that. I guess I kind of feel like this interesting mix of sympathy for Daru because he has no clue what happened to his daughter because he doesn't know that she's his daughter anymore. But also I'm like, I kind of feel like, how would you feel if your best friend knew all of this information about you that you didn't know yourself? And the fact that Ferris was able to tap into those memories makes me very concerned. She was able to tap into how the world lines has changed. I'm like, that would fry somebody's brain. That seems problematic. The fact that if she can do it, any of these other characters can do it. And how are they going to feel if they find out what Okarin has all changed? What will Kurisu? I don't worry about Kurisu so much because I think she's a mad scientist too. She'll go along with it. Daru, what if he finds out that Okarin was withholding all this information about his daughter from him? What about Mayuri? If Mayuri finds out he's changed the world lines over and over again this much after she told him not to, what is she going to do about that? So I worry about Okarin, right? So he goes to the battling complex, but then these guys are trying to get her. And I don't know who. The weird thing is the guy on the phone that was talking to try to kidnap her. He sounded kind of goofy and over the top at first, and he also kind of sounded like Daru in a way. I don't know. So at first I thought it was kind of a joke. I thought it was just like part of the Rynet battle, that they were like, I thought it was like a Rynet, instead of being, Moe culture in the video game or the board game, it was like an interactive, like in-person game. I thought it was one of those. And she was just getting Okarin involved because she's been role-playing with him. But the role-playing was when she worked at the May Queen, not now. So it makes it a little bit complicated and confusing. But I thought at first, because the guy on the phone, the kidnapper, sounded really over the top, I was like, this doesn't feel real. It feels like it's staged, or that it's part of a role-playing game. So, but then when it turned out that it was real and they got the knives and stuff out, in the park that looks similar to where Moeka took him, is this just the shanking park that they just go to when they want to confront each other and get in a brawl? I don't know. But then it got real and I was like, oh, no, wait, this is an actual thing. So, interesting. And yeah, her in like the princess outfit and all this, and them hiding in behind where all the equipment is and everything. And then the fans, the damn fans. So it all goes back by the end of the episode, which is insane. I feel like they're showing us all this tech and stuff because it's going to change back. But then there's a part of me that's like, you had an electronics town at your fingertips instead of trying to chase that fleeting going back to what you had before. Could you not have used the resources at your fingertips now in the new present? But I guess not. That part was interesting to me. So yeah, he basically takes her back. Also, it looked like some of the like outfits that the people were wearing seemed like something that Amane would have wore. So that's interesting too. Like they could have been founding members of the resistance. I don't know. And then like the handheld PC mobile, like all those electronic shops, it just felt like this episode, as they're chasing through, as Okarin is trying to change and go back to the way things were before, it just felt like the episode itself was telling us, the viewers, you don't have to do this. You can make do with what you've got now. You don't have to go back. You can't go back. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like stuff was like lost in that, Because then he asks her about the D-mail. What were the contents of it? And he explains that in the past, everything was Moe culture. So we established that the whole reason she started the May Queen and the Moe culture was it was kind of in honor of her dad. In honor of her dad. And it was because she was sad at losing him. And to be fair to Okarin, in the OG timeline, she leapt at the chance to bring her father back. She leapt at the chance to change fate. So she had originally chose because she wasn't fully happy. And I mean, and you can blame you. If you had the opportunity to bring your father back that you loved, why wouldn't you take that chance? Why wouldn't you? But the thing that was crazy is that this is the part where it gets weird and just mind-blowing. Her D-mail that she originally sent that caused her dad to live is what kept Suzuha, is what prevented Suzuha from getting the IBN 5100. Because since he had to go rescue her, he wasn't able to get her the 5100. Their meeting and stuff was all canceled and taken out of consideration. So she inadvertently, by sending that original D-mail, is part of the reason that Suzuha did not accomplish her mission. So now the question is, if what is going to be the butterfly effect of us not only changing things back to the way they were, but how is that going to affect Suzuha going through with her mission and them getting the IBM 5100? How is that all going to affect things? I don't know. So yeah. So anyway, we go to the details about her and her dad, and that's when she starts to notice everything around her. Like her eyes like wigging out, like she's, dilating, like she's on drugs, and her seeing everything is crazy. If she can do it, everybody else in that damn series can do it. And that makes me worried. It makes me the most worried for Ruka at this point, because that's a biological change to Ruka's body. And that like gender dysmorphia. And I cannot imagine what that would feel like. And that worries me because that is horrifying. And I don't like where that's going, and that's going to be our next stop. So I'm like, I'm still amazed at how much mystery we have surrounding Moeka. We got like she's part of the arc rewrite group or whatever, but the fact that we have virtually nothing of her, and the fact that she has been noticeably absent the last several episodes is creepy to me. Very creepy to me. Because we didn't even see her at the beginning of this one. So yeah, he takes her to where the May Queen originally was. And he essentially jogs her memory of the entire place, which is wild. Wild. So again, the fact that that can happen is actually terrifying. And could like rip up the fabric. But the only thing that made it like, okay, you knew that they were going to change the past, because it's kind of like when Mayuri revealed that Daru was her dad. It's like, we're going to change the past. We have to, because otherwise that knowledge could be dangerous. Her having a moment like this, they're going to change it to where she doesn't remember it. And it's like, but they change it and she thinks that she's like, oh, well, we were together in a past life. And I'm like, well, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, actually. Just, it's a little bit different than what you expect. Yeah. And then she talks about saving her dad. So I want to go back and see what that text message actually was. So, but before we get to that, we get to where they're caught, right? They're caught by the guys, by the goons, and beaten up in this, like, again, this abandoned yard where everybody, I think this is the same yard where he confronted Moeka. It's like everybody is getting confronted in this one yard. This is where everybody goes to, like, have stuff go down. I do like the visual metaphor of the ruins and everything like decaying and degrading, because that's essentially what's happening in all of this. But poor Okarin, he gets the snot beat out of him. And then as they're taking her away into this hallway, the one guy kept talking, so I'm going to be curious to watch the English dub of this, because the one guy on the phone kept talking, but there wasn't subtitles for what he was saying. And so I was like, what is going on? And then as they lead into this hallway, that's when the dad shows up with the butler in the car. So the butler's alive. The butler's alive in this. Good to know. Because she's like, stop. And that's when, yeah, the butler's been alive through all of this. So that's good to get confirmation about that. Obviously, would he track where his daughter was, because this is an electronics town and he would have a tracker on her? That would make sense. That would check. But yeah, they end up saving him. I do like the visual of Okarin, like, in her lap. Okay, and the phone call. Am I under arrest? Yeah. I do like that visual of her, like, with Okarin in her lap. That's a good visual. Also, like, bring the harem back, you know? It's also weird that it's that thing of Okarin was saved. Okarin saved Ferris, but was saved by her dad. But he's going to convince Ferris to erase her dad from existence. So this event will never happen. And it's just... I want to talk about the act structure real quick, because that kind of came to mind. We haven't really talked about that in a while. But, so Act 1, we got 25 episodes. Yeah, 25 episodes. I think we have 24. 24 or 25? Do we? I need to find this out real quick. I'm like, do we? Steins Gate season 1 episode count is, how many do we have? 24. Okay, 24 episodes. And there's a 5th extra episode. Sure, I don't want no spoilers, so whatever. We're just gonna say 24. So to be simple. So that's 6 episodes if we're doing a 4-act structure. So let's go, if we go with the Japanese 4-act structure, then episodes 1 through 6 are Act 1. Which, that's right before Moeka starts to get involved. So that's introducing the characters, getting everybody involved. That makes sense. And then, or if it was a 3-act structure, like in Western narratives, it would be episodes 1 through 8, which, yeah, that's pretty much the same thing. In both the Western and Eastern narrative structures, you're introducing your characters. So the first 6 to 8 episodes is that plot line. Then you have Act 2. Now in Act 2, you would have, in the Japanese structure, you would have episodes 6 episodes of 7 through 12, which is where the conflict arises. That's literally Mayuri dying in episode 12. That's the conflict arising. Sure thing. And then otherwise you have episodes 7 through 14, which is the second act in this structure. So yeah, so that would make sense too. Which honestly, that works for the usually in Act 2, in the European Western structure, Act 2 is where your characters are at their lowest point, usually when it ends before you start Act 3. And so literally in both episodes 12 and 14, Okarin is at his like lowest points, and he's willing to be desperate and do anything. And then that kickstarts us into Act 3. So Act 3 though, Act 3 in the Western structure would be episodes 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So would be, I guess we're going to need to adjust this. Oh yeah, it would be, never mind. I'm wrong. I can't do math. It would be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It'd be 9 through 16. So that's... actually, that actually works out, because in the Western structure, episode 16 was Suzuha and the time, and Suzuha at their lowest point, she's died, and Okarin decides to make a big decision and changes the structure. So yeah, that still works. Either you have Act 2, which is introducing the conflict in the Eastern narrative. Mayuri has died. There's our conflict for Okarin to solve. And in the Western structure, Act 16 is Suzuha has committed suicide. We're at our lowest point. Okarin makes a very big decision that will alter the state of everything. So then in the Western structure, we have started Act 3, which is the final act in a Western structure that's going to take us through episode 24. And Act 3, this is all building us to the climax, and then we have our resolution. So that's, we're on track with the Western structure, but we're actually in an interesting place with the Japanese structure, because the Japanese structure would have episodes 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 would be in the Japanese structure. Act 3 is called the turn or the twist, where things get really crazy. And then Act 4 is doing essentially what the Western Act 3 does, and that's building up to the conclusion and whatever. So honestly, the way that this season is set up, I kind of think it follows the Western structure a little bit better. You have episodes 1 through 8 introducing all of the characters and setting up the main plot. You have episodes 9 through 16 getting the plot going, and you end at episode 16 where things were at their lowest point, where things weren't changing, but then Okarin makes this decision that's starting us moving towards the climax and possibly changing things. And now we're starting that process of changing things. But is it going to work or not? That's the question. And I feel like we're also going back to our roots, because episodes 1 through 8 set up the harem of Okarin with all of these ladies, as it were. And now we kind of abandoned that in episodes 9 through 16 for the conflict. And now we're going back to our roots, back to the beginning, as it were, for this. So, oh my God. But yeah, so Okarin gets saved. I feel like Okarin has never been the type of character that I was like, oh, he's like a Casanova or a Fabio or a Romeo character. But in this episode, he's kind of like, I guess. Whether it's with Kurisu or whether it's with Ferris in there, he's kind of just like, okay, I guess we'll let this work. So then we find out that, where we go back to this. He's like, with the IBM 5100, he says, some things happened, you see. I had to break my promise with Hashida-san. And he's like, Hashida? And he's like, do you mean Suzu? And he's like, oh, you know her. She's the one who gave me the IBM 5100. So, let's go back to this. She went back in the past, right? That's what this did. So, this changed the timeline to where she was able to give the IBM 5100 to Ferris's dad. Okay? Now, why she gave it to Ferris's dad, I don't know. Maybe she had pieced together what Okarin had told her and what Mayuri had said about Ferris giving them the hint of where it was. Maybe that was the case. She gave it to the dad in this timeline. And so he had it, and she's like, oh, I'll be okay. I'll get it just like you want. Just you watch. So he had it, and she's like, okay, she got it for us. But then what happened? And then she's like, okay, you can tell him. He saved my life, so let him know. So, okay, he got the IBM 5100. And then he said she was kidnapped a long time ago, you see. And my company wasn't as big as it is now, so I couldn't come up with the ransom money. But then someone offered to buy it for a large sum of money. So here's the thing. This is where things get off the rails. She gets kidnapped, right? She gets kidnapped. And then he has the IBM 5100, but he can't pay the ransom. So someone buys the IBM 5100 and takes it, and that prevents it from ending up at the shrine or in the hands of Okarin and the others. But it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy thing. So he's like, they offered to buy it for a large sum of money. So I took the large sum of money, obviously. And then he says, you got rid of it. And then he says, I was able to pay the ransom with that money. But yeah, I've made it a personal rule ever since to keep my promises with my daughter no matter what. Even for the smallest of things, no matter what. So yeah. But here's the thing. And we had the little picture of the dad with her, which for the record, the dad with her looks like Okarin. Looks exactly like Okarin. I was like, even down to the hair, I was like, is that you and your dad or is it Okarin? Let's be real. But I guess we'll believe it's the dad. So she's looking through the pictures of her with him. I always thought her pink hair was a wig, but it is most certainly not. So she thinks back to the text message, and that's when she goes to Okarin's room. And so he's thinking back, don't follow CERN. And Okarin is thinking back to what Mayuri said. She's like, you're messing all this up. And he's like, but if I don't, you're going to die. I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think no matter what he does, she's going to die. I think it could go back to him saving her in the graveyard by hugging her. I think it goes back to that. I think it goes back to the beginning. It's not going to matter. The catalyst isn't going to change. She's still going to die. So then Ferris comes into his room, which I didn't know if this was going to get like intimate or what, because this whole episode has had this like sexual tension under the surface. And it's kind of interesting. But she's like, back before that was really scary. I've never ran into so many black-hearted people before. And Okarin tries to make the joke. He's like, well, they were wearing black shirts. He tries to make a dad joke, and it's actually really cute. She's like, I'm trying to be serious. And then, yeah, she's so tiny next to him. It's kind of crazy. And he's like, what's the matter? And she says, call me Rumiho. I mean, he's just like, oh, let's not be on a first name basis. I was like, this is getting a little bit tense. He's like, no, just call me what you normally do. So she calls him Kioma again. So I want to get to the point where she sends the text message. Because she's like, and she calls him her prince, which Mayuri has kind of put Okarin as the white knight for her. Kurisu has kind of done it. He inadvertently made himself a white knight for Kurisu when he offered to like take her to her dad and all that, which that plot line where that has gone. But yeah. And Okarin's just like, okay. He's like, I'm not a prince. I like that he doesn't give into this moment, because I felt like this moment was leading to her being intimate with him. And I'm glad he's like, no, I'm not that way with you. I'm not a prince. I'm not a saint. He's like, I've actually been doing some pretty shady things. And he's like, I'm a mad, and he doesn't say mad scientist. He's like, he starts to say it, but he's like, Mayushi's life, is it really in danger? He doesn't get to finish saying he's a mad scientist. And he's like, yeah, it is. She says, 10 years ago on my 8th birthday, my dad promised to go have fun with me. And so, but he couldn't go because of work. So then we're back up to this. She says, it couldn't be helped, but I was so sad. And so she's like, I thought maybe he didn't love me. And I said, I don't care about you anymore. I just wish you would die. And then we get the flashback. So that ended up being the last thing I ever said to him. So we see her as a kid. We see the TV where it says bodies found in plane wreckage. And it said confirmed deaths. And then we see Akiya Yukitaka. So I sent the D-mail to change that. So the D-mail is, I have your daughter, ransom 100 million, get on train. And the dad avoided the accident. So questions of where the 100 million went, questions of where that ended up. But she basically made it, that D-mail altered the timeline that Suzuha went back to change. So theoretically, where Okarin is thinking is Suzuha went back to change the past. If we just make sure that none of these roadblocks are in the way, then Suzuha might get us the IBM 5100 and everything will work out. That's a big if. That's a big if that you don't know. You can't factor in what else will change. Like, who bought the IBM? How is that changing? What about them? Are they impacted? Are they going to, like, how is that going to correct itself? It's just, it's very complicated. So my dad avoided the accident and then came back. Yeah. And then, so this left Akiba as an electronics town instead of the Moe culture. And she's like, I was happy these 10 years. I was so happy. I like that he says Rumio, and she's like, I'm going to send the D-mail. She's like, my dad died in that accident 10 years ago. That's what really happened. These past 10 years have been a dream. And I learned how much he loved me. So she's like, but Mayushi is my friend. It's so interesting because on the one hand, when she explains it this way, it's like, yeah, you really did cheat death. And you got to realize how much your dad loved you. And now you're like, okay, but he really did die. So I need to just let that go and go back to how things were supposed to happen, which was him dying in the plane crash. I need to go back to that. Okarin is not accepting the fact that he believes that Mayuri is not meant to die on August 13th, 2010. He is convinced that that is not the fate that is to await her, that she is supposed to be saved. He is convinced that that's supposed to happen, that she's supposed to be able to withstand and live through that specific date. But the problem is, it's like you've already altered it to where August 13th didn't happen, but she still died the next day because time is trying to rewrite itself to make sure that it happens. Her death is like Ferris's dad's death. It is a node. It has to happen. And Ferris had the humility to be like, yeah, you know what? This was a dream. This was amazing. I got to spend this time with him. I've treasured it, but we need to make things go back to how they were. And Okarin, instead of savoring that time with Mayuri that he has and making every moment count and just letting it happen, like Ferris is like, yeah, we need to go let that happen. He's not doing it. So it's like, I'm like, and it's like, everybody's like, well, Mayuri's our friend, so let's just let it happen. And he's like, is that going to be okay? And she's like, it's not okay. I remembered what happened before the world line changed. That's the part too. I feel like if she hadn't remembered how the world line had changed, would that impact her decision? I don't know. But yeah. So the thing of it is, she's going to walk away from this. She's like, maybe I'll remember stuff from the past, but I'll know my dad loved me. But then what about Ruka? And then Moika, we don't even know anything about Moika. So, but the one thing is they let it happen and she's like, can I please just cry? When she hugged the back of him, all I could think about is, I don't know if y'all have watched Bleach, but there's like a Bleach special where the character Orihime, she hugs the back of Ichigo. As an Ichihime shipper, it was like the one physical contact we had with them in a lot of the series. I was like, let me have this. And so I was all about it. And so that reminded me of that here. So yeah. Mm-hmm. And Okarin is nice enough to be like, yeah, sure. Like you're changing your entire fate with your father to let me have a chance to get Mayuri back. So yeah. And I look, I love the fact that he's trying to let Mayuri live. I just don't think it's going to work. Also, Okarin looks amazing. Like in the one scene where she like comes up to send the D-mail, he looks amazing. Like that's probably the best he's looked in the entire series, honestly. Like 19 minutes, 44 seconds in, he looks amazing. So it says, the kidnapping was a joke with your dad. Okay. And she sends it. She's like, do you think I'll remember? And he's like, sure, who knows? You might remember. Is that good if she remembers? I don't want to forget the time that I shared with Keoma. I'm like, oh. Again, that harem, he's just like, okay. I don't think he loves her back that way, but sure. All right, and it's on. Bye. Oh my God. Insane. So everything goes back. Everything go back. Like the picture is gone. The picture disappears. The town changes back. They leave the apartment. And we're at point 45 is where we're at. But Daru is gone as well. So I don't know where Daru went. Don't know where he's been at. I guess we'll find out. He's not the May Queen because Ferris is here. So I don't know where Daru is. But yeah, she shows up in her cosplay and she's like, have you seen my cell phone? I guess she had to be there to get the cell phone back. That just leaves you. And he's like, oh yeah. Also, his injuries are gone too. And she's like, oh, did you look at you know what? I forget you saw it. It needs to be sealed away forever. And she's like, come on, Keoma, you're supposed to answer back with what do you mean by you know what? She's like, she's trying to get him to like role play again, which he's been role playing this entire series, which is insane. And he's like, Ferris. And then I like that Kurisu gets a little bit jealous with him trying to like get to make sure to check in with Ferris. Kurisu gets a little jealous in that moment, which is great. Love it. And then Mayuri knows that he's not meaning anything by it, right? And she's like, Keoma and Ferris fought a great darkness and loved each other in a previous life. They have a deep connection. And I like that Okarin is like, I know this is cosplay and it's role playing. He's like, but you're not far off. And that's kind of weirding me out because I don't think Okarin likes her that way. It's like, and that damn sun. You sure fight lots of people. I mean, are we affecting things? I like that Kurisu's like, are you as out there as Okabe? But yeah, and he's like, I'm sorry. So we've altered the world line again to where the Moe culture is back. Everything is shifted. I'm like, are you going to destroy the world in the process of doing this, Okarin, to save your one friend? Is it going to destroy the fabric of the world? If you notice, the sun gets more wobbly as we go. I'm like, are you going to destroy the sun too? But yeah, the Moe culture is back. So the question is, where's Daru? I want to know. But yeah, as he goes through, the IBN 5100 wasn't at the Yanabayashi shrine. It wasn't there. Okay. Ferris did store it there 10 years ago. And it wasn't there until last year. Okay, so here's the thing. We find out that in the OG timeline that Ferris did put the shrine, she did put the IBN 5100 at the shrine after her dad died. Okay, so that's confirmed. But last year, it was taken. So the question is, if it was taken last year, who took it last year? Was it Suzuha? Because Suzuha was supposed to gain her memories back, but if she went back correctly, that wouldn't have happened. So why was it taken last year? Why? That doesn't make sense. Okay. Where in the world could it have gone? Yeah, because supposedly Suzuha, you changed the past so that Suzuha could go back and fix the past. But now you've entered a new world line. So Suzuha going back in the past is now different than the original timeline. You changed. Yep. Where could it have gone? I don't know how making poor Ruka go back to being a biological sex they don't want. I don't know how that's going to affect you getting the IBN 5100, but I figured it was the whole Ferris and Suzuha thing that affected that. I don't know how these other D-mails being changed is going to affect that the way you want it to be changed, but who knows? So I guess we're going to have to see. I recorded this one very late in the week. I may have to record episode 18 before I get to the comments from episode 16 and 17 on YouTube and Patreon, so bear with me. But Because I'm out of town next weekend, so I really need to record it before Friday to get it ready to go. So I may not have a lot of comments to check next week, but then the following week I may have a lot. So we'll see. But I'm curious to know what you thought about this episode. This is some dangerous shit, but we are in the final act, it feels, at this point, and I'm a bit terrified. So, of what's to come. So, anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of STEINS Gate. Bye.